Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of the State Champs Scout Show, and we have a treat for you this week. He definitely represents the State Champs Scout team, but you can see him every day representing 24/7 Sports. He is Alan True. He is host of our recruit reports, both from Michigan and Indiana. And Alan, thank you so much for taking a few minutes to talk some more recruiting with us.
Oh, always happy to talk recruiting, so thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And just so people have an idea of just how long you've been in the game, kind of just give us just a brief history on how you got into recruiting and why you've stuck with it for this long.
Middle school and high school with an NFL draft site that I started, and then my school itself played against Kevin Grady and wrote an article about him and thought I kind of like this recruiting thing. So started doing moving more into the high school side in college, and that was about 2004 2005 that I started with Scout, and then kept working my way up, and then Scout merged with 24/7. So that's the fast story of how we got here today.
We have a simple topic that we want to explore with you today, and it's a good thing, and it's the uptick we're seeing from other states recruiting Michigan athletes. So kind of talk about what this evolution has been and why they are coming in like they are.
Well, for one, I think the internet has made a big difference in that. Huddle is a huge part of that. When I first started, we had to have student athletes mail us, sometimes VHS tapes, DVDs, and they would have to do the same thing to colleges. So being able to evaluate a Michigan athlete sometimes was, most of the battle was trying to get that kid to send you a videotape. Now, any school in the country, whether it's Western Michigan, Central Michigan, all the way out to Hawaii or Boise State, can just pull up Huddle and watch all the top prospects in a state like Michigan. So that's number one. They're able to evaluate these guys quicker. Number two, they're also able to contact these guys quicker because they can just go on Twitter, send a direct message to an athlete. So there's no more waiting for mail correspondence or having to try to track down a phone number. And then I think the final piece of that is that Michigan kids have been willing to travel. They've been willing to get out and understand that they're going to have to take some unofficial visits. They've been open to going to other schools. I think if those programs came into the state of Michigan and Michigan kids weren't very responsive, they all wanted to stay close to home, we wouldn't have those schools coming back. But the more kids have gone outside the state, great example, Washington State comes way out here a couple of years ago, takes Brandon Gray out of Detroit Cass Tech. Rare to see a kid from here go all the way out to Pullman. It entices them into coming back. Now they have Christian Fitzpatrick committed in this class to Washington State. So Washington State probably would have never come back if they hadn't gotten that one guy out of here. So I think that other kids have opened the doors for the kids today that are seeing all these opportunities.
Well, I think another thing that came to my mind is that we do have some restrictions here in the state of Michigan, whether it be we are not allowed to have an ESPN come in and do a live game. So, for instance, we're in Indiana now, obviously with State Champs, and certainly they go into that state and can put on this huge game, which obviously can attract a lot of eyeballs from all over corners of this great nation of ours. And then we also have the 300-mile rule, which limits our teams from playing teams or having them come to us to have some of these maybe bigger showcase games that we will have. So it requires a lot more hustle in terms of our athletes to promote themselves. And also, I think from the coaching ranks, I think this has been a pretty interesting breeding ground here in the Mitten, in that we have a lot of coaches who have begun their careers here at various high schools or universities within the state, have gone on to bigger and better things, and whether they are staying in coaching or now that they are at the assistant level or recruiting level, they are able to use that connection, that those roots that they have here in Michigan to bring kids to wherever they are.
Yeah, I think you hit on a couple of great points there, and not being able to travel and have some showcase games can affect the state's recruitment if those kids aren't willing to go do other things that are necessary. And not just the kids, but the parents have to be responsible for some of the travel, and the high school coaches. And I think the state's done a great job of that. You think of just a team like Max X taking a 7-on-7 team down to Florida. That opens up some of those kids visit a lot of schools along the way. They don't just go down to that 7-on-7 tournament and come back. They visit schools along the way. You think about a program like Rising Stars that takes a bus tour of kids up and down the coast. Programs like that have helped kids get exposure to more colleges than just this initial Midwest footprint.
Again, we do have some coaches now who are getting, bigger and better jobs in other states.
Yeah, that point, great. So, you look at the team, I think that's probably the most talked about this year as to how are they coming into Michigan and doing this. It's probably the Kentucky Wildcats, right?
Yeah.
They come in last year, get DeAndre Square, Marquand McCall. They get Justin Rogers, Ernest Sanders, and DeAndre Buford this year. And people are going, how does this happen? Well,
yeah, that's a basketball school.
Right. But the assistant coach that's recruiting the area for Kentucky is Steve Clinkscale, who was an assistant coach at Toledo, which is right over the border. And you think about the number of Michigan kids that have gone to Toledo, that relationship carries over. So I think you're right. It's not just, it is some of the high school coaches getting opportunities, but also as college coaches have expanded their opportunities, other guys who have recruited the state of Michigan move around, those relationships remain. And I think that's helped Michigan kids get more looks as well.
We're talking with 24/7 Sports' Alan True. He also is the host of our recruit reports that you can see every week on State Champs Michigan and State Champs Indiana. He covers the Great Lakes and in every aspect of football recruiting. And, Alan, you made a point a few minutes ago that and we've seen, obviously the camps that the kids get an opportunity to go and be seen and run through the drills and all of that. But talk about the impact, because it's a relatively new phenomena, and that's the 7v7 leagues and these travel leagues, which, the MHSAA doesn't have control on in terms of restricting the high school teams. These are, in essence, all-star teams or put together teams that get an opportunity to showcase the skill in other areas of the country.
Yeah, 7-on-7 there's a wide variety of opinions on that. And one of the impacts in recruiting, which I just talked about, is not necessarily playing 7-on-7 itself, but the travel. Sometimes if you can get a team sponsored and they can go all the way down to Florida, like I said, you can visit schools along the way. So that's an impact that it has, even not talking about football. But I think when you look at how many more colleges and even in the pros, how many more passes are thrown per game, I think 7-on-7 has certainly moved that forward. And it allows kids in a state like Michigan, where we don't have spring football, to at least be throwing, catching a ball, covering people man-to-man. Yeah, it's not padded true football, but it is a simulation. You can learn skills from it. And I think that the coaches that coach 7-on-7 in the state have done a good job of making sure that these athletes don't create some bad habits that can happen through 7-on-7 and make sure that it translates into 11-on-11 football. College coaches will never make a decision on offering a kid just based on 7-on-7, but it is an additional piece of evaluation. It does allow you to see it does allow you to see some skills that you may not otherwise see. A great example, Tyree Jackson went to a 7-on-7 at Michigan State. Buffalo saw him there, offered him a scholarship that day. I was standing right there. So that kind of thing does happen from time to time.
Absolutely. Okay, we're wrapping up the Scout Show, but I would be remiss if I didn't ask you, who are some of the kids and what are some of the schools that are coming into the state of Michigan now to try to pull them for their programs?
Florida Atlantic actually came up and got a commitment from Anthony Rump from Southfield A&T, one of the state's top quarterbacks. We'll see if that opens up some doors down there for Michigan kids. I know that his junior teammate, Caleb Banks, already got an offer from FAU. NC State's been up here a little bit more. Josh Jones went down there, got drafted, and we've continued to see Michigan kids go down there and compete and do their camp. That's a frequent stop on the Rising Stars bus tour now. So I think those are a handful of the schools that are coming in, but I think you'll see more in the next couple of years also.
Absolutely. So it's as our world is opening up in terms of how everybody can have access to one another and be able to communicate, that's going to, of course, open more doors for more elite athletes to get an opportunity to play at the next level in various universities across this land of ours. He is Alan True from 24/7 Sports. Again, you can see him every week on State Champs. Alan, thanks for taking a few extra minutes today, and we'll catch up with you real soon.
Sounds great, Lauren. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, thank you.